So in this video, I wanted to cover credit scores, so a bit of a credit scores 101, covering everything from, what is your credit score, etc., how you can check it, all that sort of stuff, particularly because there doesn't seem to be much or any information, particularly on YouTube, on Australian credit scores. So a lot of people seem to mix up the Australian and the American credit score system such that basically they end up with a lot of misinformation and thinking that the Australian credit score system works as the American one does, because that's what they were always hearing about, but that's not at all the case. So in this video, we're going to sort of get rid of all those myths and understand all about Australian credit scores, and I'll also show you guys how to actually check your credit score. This video is sponsored by Credit Card Compare. So as I mentioned, Credit Card Compare has sponsored us, but something I'm really happy to be able to share is I actually reached out to them. So they didn't reach out to me and then I said, okay, cool, I'm happy for you guys to sponsor me and to talk about your product/service. It was actually such that I did a bunch of research on comparison sites in Australia, credit card sites, etc., and ended up coming across their site, really liking it and reaching out to them and asking them if we could work together in some capacity. So basically, the reason that's important for you guys to know is that I'm not saying something's better because I've been paid for it. I've reached out to them because I've already found out they were the best. So that's just something that's interesting for your peace of mind. Nonetheless, we're going to talk about credit scores and all that as well, and then I'll explain to you obviously how you can check your credit score. One of those options being Credit Card Compare's app, which is a really great app. I genuinely mean that. I actually also love their website. Not being paid to say that, I genuinely do. Again, I reached out to them myself first. Anyway, with that said, let's jump into credit scores. Let's understand them, what they are, etc. And then you can go ahead and if you like, you can check yours, etc. So let's jump straight into that. Also guys, I will be giving you guys a lot of valuable information in between throughout this video, so please do watch the whole video, and then when you get to the bit at the end when you can check your credit score, etc., you'll have all the information, because one of the things I'll be covering is how to improve your score. Of course, I did a bunch of research on that, trying to get the factual information, because there's a lot of, and I'll mention this later in the video, there's a lot of companies out there giving, dodgy fake information to make money off you. Of course, that's pretty much everywhere in the finance space, but it also applies to credit scores. So that way, once you do check your score at the end of the video, and if you do want to improve it, you can, and then all the other information I give, etc., you'll know what it means and what it affects and what it doesn't affect, etc. So please do watch through the whole video for that. Hello everyone, it is Nicholas from Aussie MONEYMAN. As always, our website, news features, Facebook groups, our new second channel, and a bunch of ways you can make some quick cash using sign-up bonuses are linked in the description below, so feel free to read through that during the video. Alright guys, so starting with what is a credit score. So what does it mean when we're talking about credit scores? Well, basically there's 3 different reporting agencies in Australia. They all rate it slightly differently, so it's not exactly universal, but basically it's a score between 0 and 1,000 or 0 and 1,200. Okay, so what actually makes up this score? So basically what is used is a credit report. So you've got your credit score, that's that number. Your credit report is what essentially determines that number. So your credit report is your financial history for the last 5 to 10 years, depending on exactly what it is. So that's, the credit cards you've applied for, the home loans you've applied for, the ones that have been approved, declined, what the outcome was, etc. If you've defaulted on any debts, if you have late repayments with your debts, if you've paid them all off on time, etc. So that credit report is what makes up your credit score. Now, this report, at least in Australia, used to only contain negative information. So, as I mentioned, defaults, court orders, all that sort of stuff, as well as some personal information, as in the addresses that you've been at, your name, etc. But it's mostly just obviously about your financial history. Used to be all negative. Now, as of somewhat recently, Australia's put some positive stuff on there. But, really, if the negative stuff isn't there, the credit companies will essentially assume it's positive, and then you'll get a better score, etc. So that's just something to keep in mind, what sort of information they actually have on this report. And you can get your report, of course, and look at your history, and I'll explain how to do that soon. But before we do that, let's look at what your credit score actually means. So what is it used for exactly? Well, basically your credit score is a way of lenders, so whether that be if you're going for a home loan or a credit card, etc., anyone who's going to be loaning you money, to assess the level of risk that they're taking on by loaning that to you, and therefore it can affect the interest rate you get, whether or not you get the loan at all, and all those sorts of host of factors. So it can be quite important, which is the next thing we'll jump into. Why should you worry about your credit score? Does it matter? Alright, so with that said, do credit scores matter? At least, do they matter in Australia? I know that they matter a lot in America, and a lot of people know that. Do they matter in Australia? Now, the answer is yes, and increasingly so. So I would dare say, based off my research, that it's not as important as in America, but it still can be very important and is becoming more important. So if we look at some data, thank you to Credit Card Compare, that supplied this to me. Of course, I'm looking at this in addition to my own independent research, as I always do. So one of the values on this channel is evidence-based. So whether that be evidence-based investing, credit scores, or anything to do with finance or anything I do on this channel. Basically, what we know is that only 10% of people in Australia, so Australians, have actually checked their credit score and or tracked their credit score, which is quite interesting. So that's a lot of Australians that don't probably know anything about their credit score, at least don't know what their credit score is. Now, another thing to note, in that 10%, apparently a bunch of those people may have actually not checked their credit score themselves, but rather a mortgage broker did it for them when applying for a loan. So that's something to consider as well when thinking about that data. Now, the reason the credit score is important, as I mentioned earlier, it can affect the rate that you get on your home loan and stuff like that. And apparently, as of 2019, July 2019, I believe, banks are being made to share their data and the information with these credit reporting agencies more and more, which basically means that banks are going to be more able to access your data, etc. And basically, everything's just going to be more interconnected. And basically, what that means is that the more information they have, the better they can assess your level of risk. And if you do have higher risk, and as most people likely, unfortunately, will, they will end up with higher rates rather than lower rates, which will, of course, cost them possibly a lot of money in the future, which is why I'm saying it can be important. Now, one other thing I just want to note with the credit scores is I mentioned they're moving towards personalizing, banks, lenders, etc. From the research that I've been able to do, it seems that they're moving towards doing that, but that isn't a thing that they're doing yet a lot holistically. So just to be really clear, that's part of the reason why I'm saying I don't think it's as important as America, etc. I do think that in Australia it's actually quite a bit less important, but is it becoming more important? Yes, I just want to make that clear. And the other thing is that obviously, particularly during the time of recording this video, so we're sort of in the middle of this economic turn down, etc. So of course, getting a loan is becoming, harder. It was becoming harder last year in 2019, but it's particularly hard now moving towards the middle of 2020 or whenever you're watching this video. So basically, it's something to consider. If you have a higher credit score, it will help you with getting that loan. Obviously, if there's competition, etc., you want to put yourself somewhere where it's going to give you the best position, of course. So that's just something to consider as well. The reason I said it could be less important than at least in America is they seem to use the credit scores for everything, but that is also the reason why I mentioned that it's becoming increasingly important here, because it used to not really cover that much, but as I mentioned, they've increased it as of last year, so 2019, to increase positive information now, which means more information is being included, it's being shared more. As I mentioned, banks sharing their information now, etc. Meaning it's already important, but it could and is likely to get more important. So it's something to look at, particularly if you want to get a house in Australia. So I know a lot of Australians are really big on property. It's quite a big thing here. So this is why your credit score may be very, very important to you. Now, with that said, I want to move into how you could increase your credit score if that's something you're looking to do. So let's say, you get to the end of this video, you check your credit score, etc., and then you're thinking, well, how do I improve it? Well, that's going to have covered now, so that would be great. Now, basically, there's one thing I want to mention that's something that sort of is a little bit frustrating, and that is that there's a lot of companies out there that will promise that they can improve your credit score, etc., and charge you a lot of money for doing that. That's not a thing. They actually can't do anything. They can't remove things off your credit score that shouldn't have already been removed anyway. So as I mentioned earlier, it's 5 to 10 years in general. So some things stay in there longer, some things shorter, so they'll go off automatically after 60 days, for example, in some things, and other things years. These credit score companies, whatever they are, can't actually remove them any better than you can. You can do it all yourself. So don't think that you can improve your credit score by paying some company a bunch of money. They're basically scams. It's even on the ASIC website and on the MoneySmart website here in Australia, basically warning people against these sites. So that's just a quick disclaimer. Could consider the behavioral aspect of it. So that's something to consider. If you have a real high credit card limit, even if you're paying it off at the end of every month, perhaps you're credit card hacking or credit card stoozing, which is when you make money from the bonus dollars, etc., and points from credit cards. I do have a video on that coming out soon. Anyway, with that said, let's jump into a few ways you actually can increase your credit score. So from my research and going straight to things like the MoneySmart website, so straight to the Australian government and to other sources as well, it's things like, number one, lowering your credit card limit. So this is actually a bit of a tricky one. So you might think, why would you lower it? If you've got a real high credit card limit and you haven't spent it for years, doesn't that show self-control, etc.? Unfortunately not. So all the information that I've been able to gather from my research seems to show that it actually decreases your credit score the higher amount of money you have, because you have the potential to spend that money and get in a bunch of debt and become higher risk. So that's the way they look at it. They look at it that the potential is there, rather than looking at more, and I'm actually going to be using Credit Card Compare site for that, because because after doing all my research of sites, and I looked at a lot, I'll have a bunch up on the screen, Credit Card Compare absolutely by far has the best site, and that is actually the reason I reached out to them. So at the beginning of the video I mentioned I reached out to them because I liked their products or service. That was what I liked. It was the best by far, the most comprehensive, most easy to read, showed you everything, etc. So that is exactly the reason I reached out to them. But anyway, guys, getting back to it, basically what you want to do is, even if you're paying it off each month and all that, if your credit score is low, you want to improve, etc. Of course, while I have to mention this is not financial advice, it is a fact that if you decrease your limit on your card, it will possibly increase your credit score. So that's something to consider. Real quick, guys, of course, everything in this video is not financial advice. This is just factual information based off my research. I do my best to make sure the information is factual and up to date, but of course, please do your own due diligence. None of this is personalized, so that's why it's not financial advice. I don't have a financial services license, etc., so it's not even general advice. It's not personalized advice. Simply factual information that I'm sharing with you. So I hope it is of value, but of course, do note you have to do your own due diligence, etc. Alright, so the next tip is to actually limit the amount of credit applications you make. So I learned this when I was first applying for a credit card, when doing my research, etc. It actually decreases your credit score every time you apply for credit. So the more you apply for credit, the more your score will be impacted by that in general. So that's something to consider if you're looking around for credit cards, etc. Do your research, then apply for the one that you like. Don't just start applying for them willy-nilly. I had a friend that did that, and I let him know, the impact of it, and it did actually impact his score a bit. So I actually checked mine, and I'll show you guys that later. And then we checked his, and we did some research on that. He's into finance as well, and it was quite interesting to look at. So that's just something to consider. Don't apply for 100 mortgages, car loans, etc. Do your research first, then apply, because overall applying for credit will impact your credit score negatively. Alright, so the last 3 tips are basically one tip, and that is to pay off your credit card on time, to pay off your car loan on time, to pay off your utilities and your mortgage on time. So basically, just pay off everything on time, pay off your phone bill, everything like that, especially things that are, loans. So if you've, gotten your phone on a plan, if you've got a loan on your car, your mortgage is obviously a loan, utility bills, etc. All those things are included, so you don't want to have late repayments, etc. So if you can avoid having any late payments by any means, it's a good thing to do in general, but it's also good for your credit score. So, of course, that's something that you want to go ahead and try achieve. All right, so with all that said, let's quickly look at how you can access your credit score. So you obviously, you know if it's good, if it's bad, if you need to improve it or not, etc., and all those sorts of things. So let's jump into that. All right, so of course that is using the Credit Health app, which is by Credit Card Compare. So real quick, let me just give you guys a bit of information about Credit Card Compare, about their security, etc., so you know that it is safe, etc. And then I'll actually jump into the app. I'll show you a bit about it, how you can check it, what information it gives you, and why I think it's an absolutely fantastic app, from everything from its user design experience. You guys know I'm big on that. When I talk about banks, I talk about Upbank. When I talk about brokers, I'm talking about Stakey, Toro. I'm talking about, these innovative, good-looking apps that not only have good features, but they're also easy to use, etc. So let me just real quick give you guys a bit of information about the company behind the app. So the Credit Health app is, of course, Credit Card Compare, who kindly sponsored this video. All right, so the Credit Health app is by Credit Card Compare and their partner, Finty. They've been around for over 10 years. They're regulated by ASIC, so that's the Australian Securities and Investment Commission. They work with all the big banks, so obviously that adds to the level of trust that you have with them, and they've helped over tens of thousands of people, get credit cards, etc., because obviously that's their main site, and I do recommend checking out their site. I don't get paid at all to mention their website, but it's just obviously the fact that I like their website, and as I keep mentioning, I've reached out to them months before they actually got back to me, and even mentioned their app to me, because I was all about the website at the time. So yeah, I already like the website, so again, check that out. I think it's really, really good. That's the website I will be using in that credit card snoozing video, as I keep mentioning. But nonetheless, they make that site. It's been around for ages, regulated by ASIC, used by all the 4 big banks, etc. So completely trustworthy and all that. So from the information I've been given, they actually made the app to make it easier for people to apply for credit cards on their site, using the app. But of course, it can be used for everything, and really should be used for everything, because your credit score affects everything. And it fits really well with the site, so the user experience, etc. So with that said, let me jump into that now. Let's start talking about the app, where you can download it, how it works, etc., why I think it's so good, and why it's useful to you. Well, when it comes to actually getting the app, you've got 2 options. So you can head over to creditcardcompare.com.au. Credit Card Compare is just one word, and you can download it there. Or you can head straight to the iOS store for you iPhone / Apple users, or the Android store, so the Play Store for everyone else. Of course, the name of the app is Credit Health, so just type that in, and I'll have the image for the actual logo of the app up on the screen, so you make sure you're downloading the right app. Alright, so jumping into the app, just a few things I want to mention sort of off the cuff that I've noticed. I've checked my credit score straight through one of the 3 reporting agencies I mentioned in the videos earlier. It was quite painful, a lot of work, and I've done through this app and others. Much easier to do it through the apps. Just want to put that out there. So if you're looking to get your credit score, I genuinely can say that it's way better to get it through this app. Alright, so a bit more about the app. Of course, as I mentioned, it's great for keeping up to date with your credit score, because actually one of the features that it has, and I'll quickly cover the features here, is that it actually will update you on your score, and it will show you your score essentially over time, which is incredibly useful, because obviously you can improve it, work on it, etc. You can, if you already have a good credit score, so when I checked mine, it was quite good. You know, it wasn't the best, it wasn't 1,000, I think it was about 800. I've never actually taken a loan before or taken debt on, so that's probably why they don't have any history of if I'll pay it back, etc. But I have paid all my bills, etc., and all those things, and only applied for 1 credit card in the past. So that's essentially my situation, and what it allows me to do in my situation, so someone with a good score, is to essentially go, okay, cool, give myself a pat on the back, say, you know, that's great, and I can watch it over time, etc. And essentially, the way they put it to me when I was doing my research is that you see yourself through sort of the banks and the lenders' eyes, how they see you. So, you know, that way, you, of course, again, if you need to improve it, I think it's where the most utility is probably. Obviously, if you've got a good score, it's sort of like, cool, and the app will actually, another feature is it will notify you if it changes. So if it goes down, well, then you can address that. But of course, most utility comes in if it is sort of low or medium, or you want to increase it more from wherever it is, then it's the most used, because it will notify you as it goes up, and you can take action sort of using perhaps some of the methods I mentioned earlier to improve your score, etc. Now, another thing I should mention is actually within the app, they do actually have a lot of information on credit scores. So, of course, that was part of my research. They've got information on obviously how to improve your score, etc., all within the app, which is absolutely fantastic. I did fact check it to my research. It's all completely accurate. Not that I ever thought it wouldn't be, of course, but you guys know I do my due diligence no matter what, and always do my research. So, great information within app. And of course, guys, the app is completely free. So, there's no in-app charges. There's no charges when, you know, applying for it, when getting the app, etc. It's all completely free. So, that's, of course, something to note as well, just as all the information on this channel is free as well. Alright, so that is pretty much all the features minus one, which is that you can actually look at your repayment history as well. So basically what that means is it's all lines of credit, you know, so your mortgages, your car loans, credit cards, everything like that. So all lines of credit, you can look at your repayment history. I believe for the last 2 years as of current, may have increased. The app is always being updated, so it's been updated so many times since I actually started doing research on it and the website, etc. So it's something to keep in mind. Whatever it is now, it's probably going to be better by the time you watch this video. I imagine a lot of people watch this video sometime after it's come out, etc. So if you download the app and it's even better than what I'm talking about, it is now, well, then that's fantastic. So with that said, regarding the repayment history, I suppose it could be useful for when you're trying to, you know, obviously keep up to date with your bills, etc. It's one more line of defense for when you're actually, you know, obviously I've got upcoming bills, etc. to make sure you don't miss them, because it's all within the app. So it's sort of intermingled there with your credit score, which is quite useful. Alright guys, and just to be completely clear, they do use quite powerful encryption, etc. on the apps. It's completely fine, you don't have to worry about that. The security is quite strong. One thing I want to note is for those of you that might use Afterpay, ZipPay, and all those sorts of Afterpay services, that's actually not included in the credit report or credit score and all that yet, because basically those companies don't report their information to one of those 3 reporting bodies, those Australian reporting bodies as of yet, meaning the Credit Card Compare app doesn't have it either, so Credit Health. So basically, of course, Credit Health, the app is just giving you the information that these reporting bodies have. They're giving it to you in a very useful, convenient way for free, etc. Again, much easier than getting it directly from the bodies. So basically, the bodies don't have it, Credit Health doesn't have it. So that's just something for you guys to note. Alright guys, and finally, of course, the sign-up process. So basically, the sign-up process is really quick. It'll take you like a minute, 2 minutes. Obviously, you have to put in your driver license, etc., so they can actually request your information from the credit report and to be able to present it to you, etc. So that's just something to consider, but the sign-up process is really quick. As I mentioned, the actual user interface of the app, as I'm sure you guys have seen, as I've shown you the footage throughout this video, is fantastic. It's simple to use, it's quick, etc. They've obviously got, you know, all the features I mentioned, and I'll have a quick summary of that on the screen now. So again, completely positive. I don't really have any critical feedback or any feedback at all that is negative, beyond the fact, of course, it isn't completely comprehensive as far as including information that even the credit bodies, reporting bodies don't have. But of course, there's nothing anyone can do about that. That's actually an Australian government thing to look at. But again, really great app. I really like their site. Again, I'm not being paid to mention the site at all. Again, I just like the site. I like the app. I'd be talking about it either way. I was making this, planning on had this video scripted before, of course, I got in contact with Credit Card Compare, etc. But just something to consider is that the app, if you like the app, you'll very much like the website, so feel free to check out that. If you're looking at credit cards, stoozing, etc., you can check out, so that's making money from credit cards. If anyone doesn't know about that, it's also known as credit card hacking. You can check out the Credit Card Compare website as well. Again, I do have a video coming up out on that soon. Anyway, guys, with all that said, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it has been of use. You can download the app down below. I have it linked down below. It's not an affiliate link or anything like that. So if you want to download it straight off the store, etc., feel free to do that. So the Play Store, Android Store, iOS Store, whatever you want to call it, iPhone Store, Apple Store, whatever you want to call it, feel free to do that. Please do hit like on this video if it has been of use. I did a lot of research on credit scores, etc., to put this video together for you using factual information and dodging all the crap information out there, because there's a lot of it. Yeah, please do hit like on the video if it's helped. Please do leave a comment, that helps with the algorithm, giving your thoughts, any feedback. Can be about anything, just say hi. I'll reply to every comment. Thanks so much for watching.